Hi, good morning. This is Kelly Hobart from Alpaca Direct, and I'm here on Technique Tuesday, and I hope you guys are all doing well. I know there's a lot going on in all around the country, and I am just happy that I know how to knit. So I can stay home and not be in the middle of it. Anyways, we're going to be talking about a project that is really nice for maybe someone who wants to learn how to knit sweaters but hasn't done it before and wants to make a smaller investment and make a vest. And I love the vest because, like I said, it only uses about 30 to, a part of the amount of yarn that it would normally take to knit a sweater. And also, what I also love about vests is they're not quite as hot, so you can get away with wearing them more often. So it's totally fantastic. But this Calidez vest is by Jen Joyce Designs, and it's a great little project. It has a lot of stockinette in it and some 1x1 ribbing, or you can change it up and do what I did and do garter ribbing. So here's my vest. I just started this on Sunday. Now it needs a final blocking, and I wanted to show you my little buttons that I got for it. And I wanted to talk just 1 second about buttons. When I'm looking for buttons for knitting, I love the 2-hole design as opposed to the 4-hole. It's a little easier to put on. And then also I was looking at these really cute metal buttons, and then I was holding them in my hand and I realized, oh my goodness, they're very heavy. And I thought, heavy buttons in knitting. Maybe not a match made in heaven. So I chose these ones because they're very similar to the color that I'm knitting with. And you know how I am, I like everything symmetrical and lined up, and the colors to, I don't know, exactly match. Sometimes I'm a little bit boring, but it's all good. But I thought these were really cute. They kind of remind me of leather buttons, but they're not leather buttons. And they're super, super light, and they're 2-hole, so they'll be easy to put on. And of course, I'm going to use my backer buttons on the back of them to stabilize my button band. And so this pattern teaches you, when you're doing your button band, you bind off 2 stitches. And and it doesn't exactly tell you where to put the buttons, but it does tell you how to make the actual buttonhole. So what you need to do is, when I did my button band, you can't really tell that this is a V-neck, but I could kind of see where the V-neck started, which is right in here. And that's where I put my first buttonhole. So I knew that that buttonhole is not optional. I want a button right there. So it pulls my V-neck in and makes it more prominent. Then what I did is I counted how many stitches here, and I started with 12 stitches between each one, and then it turned out that I only needed about 11. And then I took not these locking stitch markers, but the little bit bigger ones, the plastic ones, and I marked the actual, as I was knitting along, I put a stitch marker in each little spot where the buttonhole would be, and then 3 stitches before the edge, I would bind off 2, because that's what it asked for in the instructions. But it turned out really cute, and like I said, I just started it on Sunday. So for those of you who are learning how to knit, this is a project where you can learn some skills, and you don't have to invest a year of your life trying to knit something and maybe not ever finish it because it takes so much time. So this was kind of like a quick knit project that is really cool. Plus, another thing that's totally awesome about this pattern, and here it is right here, is that it can be knit. She gives you options for every weight, from bulky weight yarn all the way down to thinner weight yarn. And so it's very versatile, and it's for it can be for a man or a woman. Now, on one of the Ravelry product pages, I saw a man wearing this design, and it looked a little feminine. So sometimes the neck, the way that you whatever neck design that you choose, it lends itself more to a man or a woman. Although on mine I did the V-neck, and I'm a lady, and so I think it'd be fine. But I don't. This design looked a little bit odd for a guy, but really, really super cute pattern. So as we're going along, don't forget to tell us where you're from. Hey, maybe you guys can tell us what you're working on, what you're knitting, what you're enjoying, all that kind of stuff, because it gives me ideas for future Technique Tuesdays about things that we can talk about. And so I love hearing that. And sometimes the projects are just so beautiful that I end up knitting them myself. So it's totally awesome. And don't forget to post photos if you can. We love pictures too. It's totally fantastic. So now every week we give a prize. So for this last week, we were giving away a skein of Sueno worsted. And these are in the tonal colorways. And it is a superwash merino wool by Haiku. It's wonderful, or Skacel, shall I say. And it's a great plied yarn. And I wanted you guys to be able to try that. And you guys were going to help me decide to vote on the Summer Skies, the blue. And this purple is called Lavender Fields, tonal colorway.
Kind of matches your sweater.
Yeah, it's a really pretty colorway. I like that. I want to do another one of the latte baby jackets in this purple colorway for Evie. So now for this week, I wanted to give away for the prize. I found these two Comfort DK. We just got in Comfort DK, and this yarn is Baracco yarn as well. Baracco does a really good job with a lot of their yarns. Are really nice. I like them, and I'm looking for what it is, the content of the actual, if it's mixed with anything. Oh, here, it's right on the front. It's superfine nylon and 50% superfine acrylic. And what I like about this, I first saw this yarn, a friend and a young lady who works here, Brittany, she made a pair of socks out of it, and she was letting me feel her finished product. And oh my goodness, I love this Comfort. And so we decided to bring in the DK colorway because it would be great for kids. And the price point is excellent, right, Jim? Because it's right under the, right around the $4 range.
Under $4.
Yes, and when I block this yarn, it doesn't get fuzzy. It stays super, super nice. I particularly like this colorway. So you guys, this one is primary colors, and this one is, of course, the army green and purple. And
so what do you want to call them so they know what to vote on?
I don't. Well, they have color numbers. So I would say the primary colors or the non-primary.
How about army?
Okay.
Army?
Okay, army colorway or the primary colorway. Anyway, I totally like this yarn. So I'm excited to be able to use it. I think it would be great for baby projects. I really do. And so I'm looking forward to using it and see how it works up. So that'll be really exciting. I'm looking forward to that. And then also we have Comfort and the DK weight in solid colors. So you can see some really nice vibrant colors. And when this has absolutely no itch. And also what I like about it, if you look at it really closely, it has very little shine. Sometimes acrylics can be super, super shiny, and I don't like that look. It's not my favorite. So this Comfort DK is really nice. I like it. I've worked with it before, and what I like about this DK is it's not splitty. I don't find it splitty at all. I find it really nice to knit with and really awesome. Now there is a thicker weight one, and it is splitty, and that's why we haven't brought it in. But this Comfort DK is wonderful, so I'm looking forward to using that. Also, I wanted to mention we have Bravo Petites here, and I wanted to mention that we restocked our color supply and brought in new colors. And so I'm almost thinking about doing a Calidez vest out of this 100% baby alpaca yarn. And I might knit it at a little tighter gauge just to go ahead and get some structure to my vest. Because it is alpaca, it tends to be drapey. And I don't want my vest to be too drapey. Now, a lot of people will say, does your alpaca sweaters, do they stretch out of shape or what have you? And I've had alpaca sweaters for like 20 years now, right, Jim?
Oh, yeah.
And they're still beautiful, and I don't find them too drapey. They're gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. I love wearing them. What I do with mine is I treat them very carefully, and a lot of people will say to hand wash their delicates in the sink when it's a baby alpaca sweater, but I don't do that. You know what I do? I just send it to the dry cleaner. But I only wear my sweaters for good, and when I'm at home running around, I would not be wearing one of those sweaters while I'm doing housework or just running around the house. I save it for good so that they stay nice and they stay beautiful. So I was thinking about doing a vest out of this. So anyway, that'll probably be one of my future projects, just because there's some beautiful colors in here. And I love, do you see this yellow colorway? Oh my gosh, I love that yellow. And yeah, and I like this blue one. It's almost like, it's a very gray blue, and it almost it has that tonal look to it. Very, very gorgeous. Oh my gosh, I could knit forever and not knit all the lovely yarn that I want to. But anyway, so on this vest, there are some wonderful things about it. It has you go from the bottom up, and I used a worsted weight yarn, and the pattern actually is knit with a bulkier weight yarn. But like I said, it does give you options to use different yarns. Let me go sit down here. Number one, when you have these patterns, I don't usually staple them together because I might have to refer to pages next to each other, and if I don't staple it, it keeps me from having to rip it out and damage the paper more. But I really like these Avery sheet protectors that you can buy at Costco, and you can slip your whole pattern right into the sleeve and put it in a binder and keep your patterns handy so you don't have to print them out over and over. And I like using a paper clip on mine. Let's take a look over here. I wanted to show them on the gauge. Here's a little gauge swatch that I did. And if you're going to do your gauge swatch, I would say to go ahead and make it wider. Use more stitches. I was just hurrying along and just cast on some stitches. It would be nice to see how many have a good wide stockinette stitch. Now, on these patterns, sometimes they'll tell you what pattern they want their gauge in. It might be a cabled pattern if you're knitting a cabled pattern, but read those instructions so you know what it is that they're going to, what they check their gauge in. And that's very important for you to note. Also, this swatch that is here, this has been blocked. So it's nice and flat and it's ready to go. And a lot of times what I'll do, I'll do my swatch on the outside of my cake of yarn, and I will not cut it so that I can reuse this yarn again and it's not separated from the actual skein. But I separated it just for today so that we could take a look at it. And then of course, when you're doing your gauge, you want to know how many stitches there are per inch. And I like to do use a pencil and or a needle. And so if you can see right here, these are loops that come right over the top here. This right here is a stitch. You could see these are stitches right here. Mm-hmm. That's a stitch. So what you would do is you could count 2 inches. So I come away from the edge. Don't try to count way over here or way over here because it'll be off. And I would stick the point of my ruler right on the very edge of that stitch. And then just simply go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And that is just about a half. So it's 9 and 9 is 18 plus 1 stitch would be 19 stitches in 4 inches. And then you can take your calculator and get your stitches per inch. And then you would take that information over to your chart. And if you look on here, the way she's done her, see, she has 13 stitches in 4 inches. Remember, this is in a bulky weight, and that is in Lopi yarn. which is a very, it's a wool that's kind of a sticky wool and would add structure to the vest, which is totally awesome. So on mine, because I have a lighter weight yarn, I figured out that this was the size that I was going to be using.
I can't remember see it, so what does it say?
It tells you that it has all these size options from a 30 all the way to a 50. And I had to choose the 46 option because I'm using a much lighter weight yarn. And then when we did this pattern, the pattern is actually done in stockinette stitch and ribbing on the edges, and she has you do the ribbing on the edges in number 5, so 2 sizes down from whatever you knit. So say that you knit your sweater in a 10, you would do the ribbing in 8, and so on and so forth. So on when you look at my pattern where it says cast on, I took all the numbers that were important to what I was knitting and highlighted them. I just took a simple highlighter and highlighted them.
Why did you do that?
Okay, just to make it easier to see, because all of this stuff is a whole bunch of white noise. And if you can't see what you actually need to see, then it makes it hard to knit it. You're always looking for what you need, so that, this one says with larger needles cast on, and it tells you how many stitches to cast on. So I just went through my whole thing and highlighted all the stuff that I needed for my size that I was doing. Yep. And then down here on the fronts, you were going to be doing armhole shaping every right-sided row, and then neck shaping every 4th row, so every other right-sided row. So you might see on mine, when I did you see right here, I used these kind of stitch markers. After I did a decrease, I marked the decrease. And when it said to do decrease for 5 times in a row, once I had 5 of these little markers, I know that I have decreased the proper amount of times. And Sandy McCaw, she's a friend of mine that gave me some great ideas, knitting ideas through the years, and that was one of the things that she did. And it's so hard to figure out if you lose track of how many times that you've decreased, if you've done the right amount of decreasing or not. So just mark them with these little bulb stitch markers so that you can have an easy way to count your decreases. And you can also do the same thing with increases if you need to. Plus, instead of, they'll say decrease until you have this stitch count. Well, I didn't have to count over and over. I just waited till I had 5 of these little stitch markers on here, and then I counted, and yep, I had the right amount of decreases. So that's a little trick that you guys can use to make knitting your projects a lot easier. A lot of the time that we spend when we're doing projects is knitting, counting over and over and over. So anytime that we can cut down on the amount of counting that we do, the faster our knitting projects will be. So I had this little sample that I did from last week, and I did a little bit of ribbing on the edge. I picked up the stitches. Now this right here was where I did knit one, slip one with yarn in front. That was an edge. So that means that only every other row was knit.
What are you showing here?
Right here I'm showing you ribbing, and the important part of what I'm talking about here is that sometimes our top here tends to be to flare out. It tends to flare out on the ribbing, and we don't want that to happen. So Jen Joyce, in this Calidez vest pattern, she tells you to bind off tightly, but sometimes you can bind off tightly and it's still flared. So what I sometimes do, like I did in my project, if you look here, it's still nice and stretchy, and I did the Icelandic Bind Off. But a little trick that I like to do is right before I do my bind off on the very last row, I will decrease 1 stitch for about every 8 to 10 stitches. And I did it across the ribbing here. And what that does for you is it gives you a nice structure to your edge, and then you don't have to worry about binding off tightly. You can just bind off the way that you bind off. And it's not going to, this edge right here is going to stay straight, and it's not going to flare out sideways or do anything funny. Now this has not quite the correct stitch count on it, because it should have 3 stitches for every rows, and it actually has 1 stitch for 2 rows, so it's off. It needs a few more stitches on it, but you can see on here I just bound off in pattern, and I have our knit stitches here. So this is a bind off in pattern, and you can see the actual knit stitches right here. And if you look at an Icelandic bind off, it looks like a well, it has purl bumps. And so on here, you almost get the effect of an I-cord edge on it. And I like it. I really like using that Icelandic bind off. And it's a totally fantastic technique. So if I was going to, say on here, I was going to decrease, and I didn't want to have to knit tightly, I could just go in pattern. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then I would just go and do that. I did 1 and 8, and then you would just finish the pattern. The one thing that you want to remember is if you're going to decrease a stitch, don't decrease it right on the very edge, because the last thing you want is this to suck inward. So you don't want to get it in any reason to suck inward. So because I don't have very many stitches, maybe I would go back and say, okay, because I can only decrease a couple stitches, I'm going to go back and possibly do 5 stitches, and then I will decrease 1. What I'm trying to do is put the 2 decreases kind of in the center, and it doesn't have to be perfect. So I'm going to do 5 more stitches in pattern, and then I will, let me look and see how many I did. I kind of lost count. Yeah, I have 5. And then I will do a knit 2 together here. And then I'll knit that one and purl. And then let's see if we can knit. On this next area right here, I'm going to go ahead and do that Icelandic bind off. Now, you would just knit 1 stitch, and then you slip that back on your left-hand needle. And this is called the Icelandic bind off. And it's a really nice bind off. I like it. And then what I don't have to do is I don't have to be worried about getting your, having the needle be, you don't have to try to bind off tightly. That's what I'm trying to avoid. When I'm binding off, I just want to bind off normally. I don't want to stress my hands by having to bind off super tight. And I'd rather go down, if you find that you have to do that, just go down a needle size or 2. Don't try to force yourself to knit differently than what you would normally knit. It's too hard on you. So this one got, I don't know, that one got a little bit loose. But let me see if I can show you what it looks like on this side. Do you see how that is nice? And it's straight, all other than this. And I would take that little thing and just weave it in, pull it down here. I would grab a half a strand and fix that and make it work. But you can see how this bind off is nice and straight. It has some structure to it. It doesn't pull in, it doesn't pull out, and it's a great way to bind off and not have your edge flare. So just think about that when you're going to bind off. If you need to add a little structure to your edge and not have it flare going out to the sides, then just, it's another option for you to use. It's totally awesome. But this Calidez vest by Jen Joyce is a great project for all different kinds of yarn. And it's a quick knit. So for those of you who are learning how to knit sweaters, it's a great project for that, I think. Also on mine, you will notice right here, see along here, I put in that fake seam.
You showed that last week, right?
Yes, and I showed how to do that last week. So if you haven't seen it, and see, you could see how it wants to fold. Do you see that? It wants to fold on its own. So it gives you, it keeps your sweater right here on the edge from flaring out. It won't flare right here so much. It'll lay straight, and it gives it a more finished look. Because we see on all of our sweaters, like on the sweater that I'm wearing here, it has a seam, and so does this side have a seam. So they do that for a reason, and it's a really great way to add some structure. Another thing that I wanted to talk to you about is here at the top, they have you do a 3-needle bind off. Okay? And it's done from the inside. Do you see how it leaves a ridge here? And that is, I think that the 3-needle bind off versus just doing a Kitchener stitch creates exact stockinette stitch. So it would create this. So it would have nothing on the back. It would just be a straight seam with very little structure to it. Whereas the 3-needle bind off gives you this ridge right here that adds a little structure to your project and actually makes the shoulder seam look better. Because if you look on our sweaters, we all have shoulder seams too. And all of those things make subtle differences in the way our finished project looks. And but makes it look better. So, yeah, this project is really fun. Like I said, I started it on Sunday, right, Jim? Yeah. And so it's totally awesome. And then this is how much I have left of my second skein. And I'm hoping I can finish the sweater with just 2 skeins. So we'll see how it does. And then I have to block it again. But I think that it's really cute. I like it. I want to make more. And it was fun doing the button bands where you bind off 2 stitches. And then on the next row, you just come to that part where you bound off the 2 stitches and you do a reverse E-loop cast on, which is the E-loop cast on, if you're looking at cast on, you have your E-loop, that's the regular E-loop. And then she calls for a reverse E-loop, which is like that. So it leaves a purl bump.
I don't know if I can see it. Okay.
Yeah. So you have ones that leave like a knit edge and then ones that leave like a purl edge on it. But I think either one would work fine. I think sometimes we get a little too technical. But anyways, I really do like the bind off. There's another thing about the buttonhole with the bind off, and that is that sometimes with our yarn over buttonholes, they're not really defined buttonholes. It's more like a sloppy hole, not a structured hole. And so with if you look at these bound off ones, do you see how it's a very structured hole? And you don't get that with the yarn over bind off. Do you see that? And so I think that's a really neat way to do buttonholes. I think I will be using that more often. I like it. It was good. And also, if you look, that was 2-stitch bind off. And if you look the way your buttons will fit through there, isn't that nice? It fits really, really nice. So I'm looking forward to finishing this one. So it'll be totally awesome. Okay. Let's take a look and see who the winner is for the contest. Oh my goodness gracious. Okay. So we have our contest every week, and for this last week, do you know which one won, Jim?
It was the blue.
The blue.
Oh, actually, the purple. Sorry.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Purple.
What was it called again?
It's called Lavender Field Tonal.
Yeah.
Okay. So the winner for this last week was Lavender Field Tonal. And let's see where, I know I highlighted it. Oh my word. Jim, Okay, so Martha, if I crucify your last name, maybe I better spell it. I'm telling you, this one's hard to pronounce. It's Awdziewicz.
Now go ahead and try to pronounce it.
No.
Okay, you spell it again.
Awdziewicz? I don't know. Okay, so Martha, you won. And you won this lovely worsted weight Sueno in tonal colorway. And I really like the lilac fields, or lavender fields.
So you can congratulate Martha.
Yes, Martha. And can you just show them the name? So Martha knows that it was her, because I can't pronounce her name properly. I'm sure if I heard it, it's probably really easy to pronounce, and I'm just trying to crucify it or something. I don't know. But congratulations, Martha. I'm so glad that you won this yarn. I'm pretty sure that you're going to like it. It's great yarn. Calidez does a really good job with this yarn.
We did a club with that too, remember?
Yes, it's a fantastic yarn. I really, really like it. And you guys, don't forget to help me choose for this next week. We're going to be doing the comfort colors, one in the army colorways, did we say, Jim, in the primary colorways. And so you guys help me choose. And then when you guys are doing your projects out there, and if you need help, we have this VIP group, and the VIP group is free to you, and it is filled with some very talented knitters and crocheters, and they get together and they help each other out, and they post the pictures, and they give you project ideas, and it's totally awesome to be able to be part of that group. So all you have to do is go where, Jim?
Just go to the VIP group on the Facebook page.
Yes. So you go ahead and do that, and then you sign up, and it's free.
They can't hear me, so you got to say.
Oh, so you want to go to the VIP group on the Facebook page, and then you can sign up for it, and it's free. And it's a totally fantastic, talented group of people that are there helping each other, and they're totally positive. And it gives you something that you can kind of aspire to. Well, it helps you grow as a knitter or a crocheter, and you get great ideas, and you get encouragement and positive encouragement. Lovely ladies, very, very talented. If you get stuck, they have ideas on how to get you unstuck. And so that is always fantastic. And we also have a knit club. It's called Kelly's Knit Club, and that is a paid-for knit club. But every month we try to build on your skills and teach you things. And I have videos that go, so you get the yarn, the pattern, and then videos that go all the way from the cast on to the bind off with each section, so that I can teach you how to knit the projects, and I try to help you so you don't get stuck. And anyway, you can always ask questions, and we help each other out. But it's great fun, and it's a great way to learn. And a lot of people who have done it have said that it has helped to learn. They learn a lot. They increase their skills. So it's a totally fantastic group. So if you wanted to be part of that, you can find that on Alpaca Direct as well. So for today, we were looking at the Calidez vest by Jen Joyce, and it's a great project for beginning knitters, and you can knit it in a multitude of different yarn weights. So that is very important. And then just if you learn to highlight the sections that pertain to the project that you're going to be knitting, then it'll help you be able to quickly knit the project and not have too many problems. And then just little ideas about maybe binding off a few, decreasing a few stitches before your bind off to keep your edges from flaring and keeping them looking beautiful. And of course, I love that Icelandic Bind Off because it looks beautiful on both sides. And using the bulb stitch markers for decreases is a great way to help keep track of your decreases and or increases when you're doing projects that are require you to do that. And the 3-needle bind off adds structure to the top of your vest, and it's totally fantastic. And don't forget, when you're picking out your buttons, don't pick out super heavy buttons because they can weigh your project down and make it not look quite as lovely. So save those heavy buttons for maybe a fabric vest and not so much a knitted vest. And of course, I love the 2-hole buttonholes. It's easier to fix your buttons onto the back of your, onto your vest and get them sewn in place. Was there anything else that I missed? Oh yeah, and don't forget, you guys, don't forget, I know the gauge swatch is, a lot of people think it's a pain in the neck, but doing a gauge swatch is invaluable. You don't want to knit a project just to find out that you can't quite fit into it. And so doing a gauge swatch and then blocking it. But you can keep it attached to your yarn. If I had this attached to this side of my yarn and I needed a little extra yarn, I'll just unravel this and use it to knit with. And so it's totally awesome to be able to do that. And then, of course, those faux side seams are a great invention by Elizabeth Zimmerman. Of course, she teaches us all kinds of stuff and super easy to do. And if you have never seen that before, watching last week's Technique Tuesday is a great way to take a look at that. And I think that's about all we have for this. Next week, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be talking about how different fabrics that you can create and how they might look differently if you choose different contents of fibers. Or maybe you have 100% baby alpaca as opposed to a merino superwash wool with a very tight twist. How they'll look differently on your finished projects. So I thought we'd go over that because that maybe will give us some insight into choosing yarns, and so that you have the best opportunity possible to be able to create projects that you will love. And so I hope you guys have a great week, and we will see you next Tuesday.